Our piece culminates in example 1-1D. This is the full orchestration, and if this looks a little daunting at first, that's understandable, but let's zoom in and let's try to break this down a little bit. So if we look at the very bottom, we've got our violin, cello, and bass. This is exactly what we had in example 1-1B in our previous video. So that hasn't changed at all. In fact, all we did in example 1-1C is we added, see how we've got violoncello and viola, 8VA, and piano. So we have piano and viola. Viola's playing the same line up an octave. So that line will kind of sound like that. And similar down here, we've got contrabass plus piano plus bassoon. So those instruments are just, they're all playing the same thing, and they're just reinforcing that sound. And then we've still got violin, just adding a few extra notes up there. So if we zoom out a bit, we've got all this extra stuff up here. So let's look at this. These lines, this is our percussion. And really what's happening is we've got a big gong hit here. I don't have a gong pulled up at the moment, but just a big gong sound. Now, we've got a note here that the bass drum complements the 3-3-2 rhythm that was originally in a cello line, the ostinato. Okay, let's hear how this sounds first. So if we look at the rhythm of the bass drum, we've got a hit on beat 1 that lines up with the beginning. We've got a hit on the and of 2, which lines up with that. We've got the same thing in the second measure here. And then we've got this extra little eighth note hit over here. So it's not perfectly outlining 3-3-2, but we are getting hits on the first 3 eighth notes here. This is 1 and 2, and then and 3 and 4 and here. So boom, 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 boom. So just a little bit of a support for that 3-3-2 rhythm. Up above we have toms and snare, really just adding a lot of rhythmic texture, just a lot of energy. So see this eighth note rest we have, let's see if I can highlight it, here we go. We've got an eighth note rest at the very beginning. So this, like it says, it provides a little room for that bass drum to really shine. And that seems to be true for this hit and this hit over here. So see, we've got a little rest right there. Let's look at what the flutes and horns are doing. We actually have a recording of this piece with the winds and horns turned up in the mix and everything else turned down. So let's listen to that first. So we've got flutes, oboes, and the horns. They're outlining a melody against all of this. So remember, we were in, see, we've got a little chord staff up here. We were in C minor, and so our melody begins on a C, dips down a little bit. Let's see if I can flip over to a flute sound for you. I might be able to do that. Yeah, there we go. Here we go. So we've got flutes right here. It's just that little line. So as our ostinato moves to D flat major, our melody ends up on D flat. Then our ostinato, do you remember that we had the cello line in C minor, but we have the bass playing the E flat? Really, this is like a harmonic inversion. We're hearing the third of the chord, the E flat, in the bass. So we could describe that as C minor over E flat, which we have right there. So the melody just keeps supporting this harmony. The melody moves to E flat, up to G, and then it comes to rest on an F in our last measure. And that F is the third of D flat major. And the horns here, they add a few extra notes, E flat, B flat. So at first glance, if you're not familiar with reading a lot of orchestral scores, or even if you are, at first glance it might look like there's a lot of stuff going on. And in a way there is. But if you zoom in and get up close to it, it's not that scary. The big ideas that we have are the ostinato in the strings. We have melody in the flute and oboes. The horns kind of support this melody at first, and then they start providing harmony over here. And then against all of that, the percussion is amplifying the energy and driving the rhythm. So as a recap, we began with a one measure ostinato in the cello. We modified it and turned it into a four measure pattern. We expanded it by adding supporting lines in the strings, the violins and the contrabass. Then we layered in the woodwind melody and horns, and we added percussion for some extra energy. And all together, that gives us our orchestral piece, which began with a simple ostinato pattern.